I was baffled. Here I was, an adult, more physically connected to more people than I had ever been in my whole life. I was on a quiz team. I had carved my way out of an oppressive marriage and job. I had found support and friendship in a way that I never thought would be possible for me. I had validation, approval, friends, more friends than I really had time to see or keep in contact with. See, at 45, I had even begun to understand why I'd always spent my life feeling like I didn't fit in, confused by the ease that others navigated their way through life and relationships. You see, at 45, I was diagnosed autistic with ADHD. It provided so many answers about my life so far. It had provided enough freedom, courage, and confidence to start not one, but 2 successful businesses. I had everything I needed. I should have felt on top of the world. But I didn't. I felt alone and disconnected. And the only way I could explain it with this story that kept coming back to me time and time again, cutting through the fog that is my memory. I was 10 or 11 years old. Who am I kidding? I've got ADHD. I don't really quite remember how old I was. But it was of school years, when I was still able to go to school, that is. So anything between the ages of 6 and 11 years old. Standing in a group, a simple, everyday question came up. What's your favourite colour? My eyes lit up. I knew this one. I could do this. You know the third shade of purple, 0.8 on the Dulux 1982 paint chart? I am still waiting for someone to correct my memory of that code. I digress. You know the third shade of purple, 0.8 on the Dulux 1982 paint chart? I didn't get to say anymore. I was suddenly very aware of the faces all around me, the glances between each other, the confusion, or was it ridicule? It was the look that confirmed I had messed up again. I had humiliated myself. The look that said, what is wrong with you? Why are you so weird? Why can't you just be normal? The next time that question came up, I knew better than to answer first. I waited. I listened. I took note of what was being said. Blue? Blue? Right, 2 people have said blue. Blue is normal. Wow, a 3rd person has said blue. Now I'll get the look for copying. Yellow, green, red, yellow, yellow. Yellow is my favourite colour. From that day on, I did not ask myself what my favourite colour was. Every action, every interaction was dedicated to avoiding the look. Now apply that to anything and everything you are ever asked your opinion on, or want, or need. Even basic human functions become a minefield, like when was it appropriate to be hungry or thirsty or need a wee? Every decision was dictated by avoiding the look. The problem is, nobody tells you that it's subjective. Nobody tells you that it's okay to be different. And that one day somebody is going to be so excited by the answers you give that it becomes contagious and gives them permission to be themselves. No, when you are born to stand out, when you are part of a minority, as a child, you don't feel magical and unique. You don't even feel part of a minority. You feel alone. And as a child, standing out and being different does not feel safe in an environment where it's all about fitting in. So you embark on a journey of trial and error to avoid the look, slowly realising that what works in one situation does not work in another. Hundreds of moments where you are silently excluded, silently called a freak, playing on your mind until you say less and less. You give safer and safer answers until you fade to the most muted version of yourself. The more people that you see and speak to, the further away from yourself you become, the more alone and lonely and disconnected you feel. Richard Carlson once said, "Being heard and understood is one of the greatest desires of the human heart. You rarely, if ever, feel either. You lose connection with yourself first and foremost. And if you are not connected to yourself, you cannot connect to others in a way that makes you feel heard and understood. They're not connecting with you. They are connecting with a traumatized, silenced illusion of you, A mask. A mask that is created probably when you're about 4, 5 years old. You've just started knowing that you're an individual. You've started realising that you're a little bit different to everybody else. So you look around that room and you think, I can do this. If I just copy the most successful person in every room, I can do this. The one that's liked, the one that never gets in trouble, the one that's never told off. If I just do what they do, I can stay out of trouble. I will never again get the look. The mask of protection has been created and seems to grow stronger with every interaction, making you drift further and further away from yourself. We are led to believe that loneliness is not having enough people around us. In reality, we know that loneliness is most painful, most visceral, when we are surrounded by people but feel completely disconnected. So many people come to me with that same hollowness inside of them. They've come to understand that they have been interacting with the world through a mask. But what now? The mask is slipping, and they don't seem to be behind it. Behind that mask, they're not there. There is nothing. Whatever tools they had that got them to that point seem forever lost to them. I remember leaving school in my second term of secondary. 11-year-old me came out of the school gates and just fell to the ground, utterly exhausted, barely registering my bag fall down to the ground beside me. I sat there until I was found hours later, a silent, rocking ball. You see, I tried to go back to school after that. I really, really did. I tried to use whatever mechanism had allowed me to go back day after day to that point. But it was too late. The mask had fallen off. And all that was left, there didn't seem to be anything behind it. All that was left was fear, confusion, emptiness. You see, the journey out of loneliness is not connecting yourself to more and more people. It's reconnecting to the most exciting, unique, wondrous human that you can be. You. If this resonates with anybody, I hear what you're thinking. But I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. Yes, I've got my diagnosis. I know I'm neurodistinct. I have my tribe. It's just a simple fact that friendships will forever be exhausting to me. No. We do not burn out, isolate and withdraw because we don't like company. It just becomes too much work. That mask gets really heavy after the minutes and hours and days and years. So how do we lighten it? How do we find that person behind the mask? You see, unmasking is not this magical thing that happens the minute you realise you're neurodistinct or that you've been masking. Unmasking is the byproduct of every single time you do or don't do something based on one simple fact. You want to or you don't. I don't mean the want to that comes from being afraid, seeking approval, avoiding being awkward. You don't want to make things difficult. I mean the want to that knows that other people's reactions are not the gauge of whether your wants and needs are valid. Let me repeat that. Other people's reactions are not the gauge of whether your wants and needs are valid. Sit with that for a moment. And I don't just mean the big stuff. I mean everyday things, like, would you like a cup of tea? When faced with that question and your mind races to, are they making tea or coffee? Do they even want me to have a drink? Or is it some code for stand up or sit down or some other neurotypical nuance like the meeting is over? As your mind races, bring it back to that question. Do you want a cup of tea? Do the thinking if you have to. When did I last have tea? Do I even like tea? And base your answer entirely on, do you want a cup of tea? Now, anybody that hasn't been traumatised by the look, and I use the word trauma here and it can seem flippant, but that's exactly what it is. The look is an example of those microaggressions you hear of when we discuss children with undiagnosed autism, dyslexia and ADHD, to name a few. Now, if you've never been on the receiving end of that look, you'll be thinking, Well, that's simple enough. But oh, the look. The look when you have been traumatized when you have been trained by your anxiety response to avoid that look at all costs. You're in utter panic, afraid that you're about to be rejected or humiliated or embarrassed. The key to unmasking is to support yourself through that whole body reaction, through that RSD, rejection sensitive dysphoria. Look it up if you haven't heard about it. The key is to support yourself through that anxiety that you have come to associate with stating your wants and needs, and then accept or reject that cup of tea. And do you know what your nervous system will realise? The world didn't end. At the moment, the only neural pathway that your nervous system has is ignore your needs and the world doesn't end. Ignore your needs and the world doesn't end. And then when you express your needs, when you try this for the first time, and the physical reaction passes without the world ending, your brain is like, oh, a new possibility. You try it the first time and you chip away a tiny piece of that mask. You try it again. You ask for something, you panic, and the world doesn't end. You say no to something, and you panic, but the world doesn't end. And then one day you realise you've gone a whole 10 minutes without overthinking your responses. And then an hour and a day and a week, that mask slowly being chipped away. You also notice something else. There are people and situations where that void diminishes or disappears completely. People and situations where you're not having to allocate 2 hours of recovery and overthinking for every hour in their company. You feel a reprieve from the loneliness. I know what many of you are thinking, but I don't know what I want or what I like. There are 2 questions you can ask yourself in those moments. Firstly, am I saying yes or no because I want to, or am I seeking approval, afraid of confrontation or afraid of rejection? Secondly, will saying yes or no overwhelm me or impact my well-being? Oh, and there's something I need you to know. If ever you have panicked and given an answer, guess what? You're allowed to change your mind. That will come as a surprise to many people. In your quieter, calmer moments, create some automatic script for when you're faced for the decision to give you some headspace. I need to check with my partner. I need to check my diary. I need to have a think about it. Other people do not need to understand in order to accept and respect your need to ensure that you are not abandoning yourself and acting out of anxiety in those moments. In the words of the world's wisest and greatest philosopher, those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. Dr. Seuss, my hero. Now, would you like a cup of tea?